Chapter 34, Second Year, 13. Saturday the 10th of March, 1973. The marauders could not have been happier to discover that Remus's birthday occurred on a Saturday that year. This, in their opinion, opened up the day to all sorts of excitement that would simply not be possible on a weekday. As the day approached, Remus tried to ignore their teasing and heavy-handed hints about what lay in store. He didn't mind what they did. He trusted them well enough. They could be relied upon to make a fool of themselves, but so far they had never made him the butt of the joke. James had been receiving strange lumpy packages bound up in brown paper for the past week, and Remus's only hope was that they weren't for him. He would never be able to return the favour. Remus thought a lot about being 13, specifically being a 13-year-old wizard with a little furry problem. The discovery of the Ravenclaw trophy cabinet had done some very strange things to Remus's internal dialogue. He'd always thought he had a pretty good idea of who he was. A care home kid, poor, a bit weedy, angry, bad, scarred, thick when it came to school stuff, but clever enough when it counted. Coming to Hogwarts had brought some changes, of course. Maybe he wasn't that thick, even if he was still sure of everything else. His father had been really clever. He was in Ravenclaw after all. The Sorting Hat had considered Remus for Ravenclaw too, but changed its mind. It hadn't meant a great deal to him at the time, but now he wondered and wondered about it. What if he'd been sorted into Ravenclaw? Would he know more now about his father, about who he was? What if his father had not killed himself? What if he had never been bitten at all? What if was a dangerous game. As he fell asleep on the night before his birthday, Remus slipped into a dream that he had not had for a very long time. He is lying in a bed, in a small, pale blue room. It's summer, and the sash window is wide open, curtains blowing. The window is huge, big enough for a grown man to get through. Remus is very small and very frightened. There is someone in the room with him, and they're going to hurt him. It's a monster. His mother promised that they weren't real, but she's a liar, a horrid liar, because there is a monster, and it's crossing the room now. It's coming towards him and will eat him up. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? He scrunches his eyes shut and ducks under the covers and trembles and sobs. Then there is nothing solid, nothing real. He is in pain. There's so much blood and so many tears and an awful lot of noise. He just wants to sleep. Another man looms over him, tall and slender and worried. "Daddy! Lumos Maxima!" Remus started awake with a jolt, nearly crying out. The dorm room had filled with bright, unnatural light. It sliced through his bed curtains, making him squint. He just had time to wipe the tears from his cheeks before Sirius and James ripped back the heavy drapes, chanting, "Happy birthday, Lupin!" "It's still dark out, you pricks," he squinted, rubbing his eyes and sitting up. He tried to will his heart to stop pounding so hard. "It is precisely 1 minute past midnight," Sirius said, "and therefore officially your 13th birthday." "Where's Pete?" Remus climbed out of bed, stepping into the room. They had decorated it haphazardly with streamers, which he was sure usually decked out the Quidditch pitch on match days, and strings of fairy lights left over from Christmas. "On a mission," James said, eyes twinkling. "Come on, get dressed." "Where are we going?" "Nowhere," Sirius replied breezily. "But you'll want to be properly attired for when your guests arrive." "My guests?" "Of course," Sirius grinned. "We tried to keep it marauders only, but so many people wanted to celebrate with you. See?" Remus couldn't tell if Sirius was being sarcastic, so he chose to not respond, instead pulling on a pair of jeans and a long-sleeved t-shirt that looked clean enough. By the time he had dressed, there was a sharp rap at the door. "Come in," James boomed cheerfully. Sirius saw Remus wince and explained, "It's okay. We put a silencing charm on the room." Remus frowned. So, whoever's on the other side of that door can't actually hear us. James clapped his hand to his forehead. We are complete idiots, he groaned at Sirius, pulling open the door. Peter stood outside, looking very pleased and very pink, surrounded by Lily, Marlene and Mary. Remus gaped as they all entered the room, smiling widely and clearly thrilled that they had surprised him. They were all clutching cards and small packages too. I didn't think girls were allowed in here. The lovely Mary tested it for us last week. Nothing bad seemed to happen, James explained. One day you'll all read Hogwarts a history, and I can finally rest, Sirius sighed, shaking his head tragically. James had begun pulling out packages from under his bed, ripping them open. It seemed they had raided Honeydukes again. Mountains of sweets were unearthed. Bertie Bott's every flavoured beans, chocolate frogs, whizzing whizbees, Drubal's best blowing gum, sherbet lemons, cauldron cakes, not to mention the haul Peter had brought up from the kitchen. Ham sandwiches, egg mayonnaise, coronation chicken, cheese and pickle, packets of Remus's favourite flavoured crisps, salt and vinegar, Scotch eggs, sausage rolls, pork pies, cheese and pineapple sticks, plus some fruit. Sirius, meanwhile, was laying blankets over the floorboards and scattering a few plush velvet cushions. Lupin, he said with a wide smile. Welcome to your midnight feast. Happy birthday, Remus, the girls chanted, as one. They all sat down together, and Sirius settled a record onto his player. He'd eventually opened his gifts from a dromedary. As requested, he'd received 2 Bowie albums, Hunky Dory and The Man Who Sold the World. Sit next to me, Sirius, Mary said quickly, earning a reproachful look from Marlene. Sirius shrugged and acquiesced, but leaned over to hand Remus a package. Open this first. It was long and cylindrical, very light and badly wrapped. You didn't have to get me anything, Remus mumbled, untwisting the ends. A poster? Lily furrowed her brow, watching as Remus unfurled the thick glossy paper. It was a huge A2 print of David Bowie in black and white, wearing a spangly silver costume and giving a slightly jerky high kick. I got a dromedary to send it to me at Christmas, Sirius grinned, unable to contain himself. But I enchanted it to move myself. Wow, Remus smiled back sincerely. Thanks, it's amazing. The girls had all gotten him packets of sweets and cakes, and Lily gave him a book on potions. He looked at her sceptically, and she grinned. Can't keep giving Severus a reason to lord it over you. Please do not mention Snivelus's name on this most sacred occasion, James said with mock horror. Lily rolled her eyes and returned to her jam tart, conspicuously ignoring him. James seemed hardly to notice, just cleared his throat and looked at Remus, his dark eyes full of wickedness. My present is coming later, once we've all stuffed ourselves to bursting. Oh, Merlin, Potter, Marlene giggled. What have you got planned? He would not tell. Remus had to admit that he was enjoying himself. He had hoped that James and Sirius would respect his wishes and keep the celebrations to more orders only, but inviting the girls wasn't too bad. He knew them all quite well now, and actually quite enjoyed their company. Mary could give Sirius a run for his money when it came to bare-faced cheek, and, as Remus predicted, Marlene's impressions of the faculty members had the marauders in stitches. Peter even had to go and change his shirt after snorting pumpkin juice down himself. Starting to see why Remus has been abandoning us for you lot, James said, at about 1:30, wiping tears of laughter from the corners of his eyes. Yeah, you're not bad for girls, Sirius winked at Mary, who scoffed and gave him a playful shove. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with me wanting to get my homework done, Remus replied dryly, wondering if he could manage another chocolate frog. Oh, how times have changed, Sirius said haughtily. You'll all be laughing on the other sides of your faces when Remus beats you in all your exams, Lily quipped. Huh! James got up, stretching elaborately, as if he was about to perform some great feat. Exams? We marauders have higher concerns. My dear Mr. Black, Mr. Pettigrew. He made a sweeping gesture towards the dorm window. Shall we? By George, Sirius stood up abruptly. Is it time? James closed his eyes solemnly and nodded. Indeed it is. Then make haste, Peter cried, standing up too. The girls shot nervous glances at each other, and then Remus, who could only shrug to show them he had no idea. Sirius, Peter and James went to the window, flinging it open. They were fidgeting from excitement, lack of sleep, and too much sugar, and kept sniggering like naughty children. Come on, Peter beckoned the others. You'll want to see. James had produced a collection of bright red objects which looked like a cross between space rockets and stick of dynamite. His arms were full, and so were Sirius's. Are those? Marlene scrunched up her nose. Not Dr. Filibusters. James just gave a maniac's smile. Oh no, Lily said. We're not supposed to. You'll wake up the whole castle. Get lost if you don't like it, Evans, Sirius snapped, handing a few rockets to Peter. You promised not to spoil anything. Remus, Lily turned to him. Tell them, they'll listen to you. No, they won't, Remus replied. Anyway, I want to see. I've never seen wizard fireworks. You're in for a treat, Sirius winked. How many do you need? Mary stared, sounding impressed. 13, obviously. You're all going to get in so much trouble. Oh, stop being a goody-goody, Lil. Marlene threw her arm around the redhead. We won't let any of you girls get in trouble, James said sincerely, his glasses slipping down his nose as he struggled to keep control of his cargo. Don't worry. I'm not worried, Lily folded her arms defiantly. I just think you're all being... Oops. Bang. Peter! They all leaned out the window to see the rocket Peter had dropped tumbling towards the ground in a torrent of green and gold sparks. Sorry. Peter looked sheepish. Sirius laughed. No, great work. Now we've started, we may as well continue, huh? And he began to hurl his own fireworks out the window, clear into the night air. James and Peter quickly followed suit, and soon enough even Lily had forgotten to be annoyed as they all stared in awe at the spectacular display lighting up the starry sky. The fireworks went on much longer than Muggle ones, some bursting 10 or 12 times before fizzling out. They changed colours, from red to green to purple to orange, twisting and curling in various shapes, eventually spelling out, Happy 13th birthday, Rimu. Sirius sighed, irritated at that. Knew it was too many letters. As well as the dazzling light display, the fireworks were satisfactorily noisy, so much so that Remus could already hear the other Gryffindors in the tower opening their windows to see whether the castle was under attack. He was sure he heard whoever was in the room above theirs mutter, Them bloody marauders are at it again. Inevitably, someone began hammering at their door, and McGonagall's shrill voice could be heard on the other side. Potter, Black, don't think I don't know you're behind this. Open this door. Oh shit, James grimaced. Better get under the beds, ladies. Once they had all been thoroughly reprimanded, promised 2 weeks of detention and letters home to all of their parents, McGonagall, who was a sight to behold in her red tartan nightie, left them, and Marlene, Lily and Mary reluctantly returned to their own dormitory. It was 2 o'clock in the morning by then, and the boys decided it was finally time for bed. Happy birthday, Remus, Peter called out, followed by a loud yawn. Remus smiled to himself in the dark, his cheeks almost aching. Yeah, Sirius yawned back. Happy birthday, Rimu. Chapter 35, Second Year. What's in a Name? Monday, the 19th of March, 1973. I have a spot of good news, Madame Pomfrey smiled warmly. I didn't want to mention it in case we couldn't sort things out in time, but you'll be seeing me over the summer. For a moment, Remus dared hope that this meant he was not going back to St. Edmund's, but the Mediwitch continued. Mrs. Orwell, your matron at the children's home, has kindly permitted me to apparate onto the grounds at dawn following both full moons this summer." She smiled widely. "Ah, well, it was better than nothing." He smiled back weakly. "Great," he croaked. His arms and legs felt as heavy as lead. He could barely raise his head to drink the potion she was offering him. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and Remus had missed his lessons. He had been asleep most of the day. Sleep was still the only remedy that seemed to really work. "I told Dumbledore I would do it with or without his permission. I couldn't live with myself if you arrived here in September in the same state you did last year." "I could stay at a wizard's house this summer. That would be even safer," Remus tried. "My friend James—" "I'm sorry, dear." Madame Pomfrey shook her head. "It's just not safe enough. The Potters did get in touch, but we need to preserve your anonymity for as long as we can. I know it isn't much fun for you, but it's better to stay with Muggles." Remus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. It would only be 2 months, and the summer was still ages away. Stay positive. Stay positive. A sudden clattering noise at the end of the ward jerked Remus out of his meditative chant. Madame Pomfrey frowned and turned to look around the bed curtain. "Mr. Pettigrew!" she shouted. "What do you think you're doing?" Sorry, Madame Pomfrey, we would just—" "Pick those bedpans up right now and put them back in the cupboard. And you can wipe that smirk off your face, Mr. Black. Give him a hand." "Hiya, Remus." James peeked round the curtain. "Sorry about all the noise." Remus grinned, trying to sit up. "It's okay." "Lie down," Madame Pomfrey chastised. "You've had 3 broken bones, you silly boy." "I'm feeling much better." Crash! "Mr. Pettigrew, what did I say?" Madame Pomfrey disappeared, looking very cross. James slumped into the chair beside Remus's bed. "Ready to go?" he asked casually. Remus could always count on James to not treat him like an invalid. "If she'll let me." Remus nodded to the curtain Madame Pomfrey had vanished behind. "How was the match?" "Smashed it," James nodded enthusiastically, dropping the snitch into Remus's lap. He ran his fingers through his hair as if to regain that feeling of having just touched down. "Made one of the Ravenclaw beaters cry." "How nice." "How was, your night?" "Fine," Remus replied dryly, twisting his mouth. They didn't often talk about the full moons, and Remus was pretty glad about that. He didn't like the idea of them knowing too much. Pain was a personal thing. 3 broken bones, did she say? "Yeah, all fixed now, though. She's amazing. Only takes 1 spell. Muggles have to wear plaster casts for weeks and weeks." "Weird." "Remus!" Sirius whipped back the curtain. "You're alive!" He fell dramatically at the foot of the bed. "I was convinced she was trying to cover something up. The old bat wouldn't let us come over." "Don't call her that," Remus replied irritably. "And don't call me that." "But you wanted a nickname," Sirius said, sounded affronted as he climbed back to his feet. Peter appeared, looking sullen with his hands in his pockets. "No, I didn't," Remus frowned. "When did I ever say that? Last year," Sirius said quickly. "Almost exactly a year ago. You said you wouldn't mind being called anything as long as it wasn't Loony Lupin." "God, you've got a memory like an elephant," Remus rolled his eyes. "Anyway," he lowered his voice in case Madame Pomfrey was lurking nearby. "The whole point of having a nickname is so that no one knew who wrote the map. I don't think Remus is going to fool anyone." "He's got a point there," James said wisely. "As much fun as it's been." "Fair enough," Sirius heaved a sigh. "But can we call you Remus until we come up with something better?" "No." "Boring." Sirius cast around for something else to say, conspicuously avoiding looking at Remus's bandages. "So, are we getting out of here, or shall I settle down for a rousing game of Snap?" "He's not going anywhere," Madame Pomfrey bustled in. "I'm keeping Mr. Lupin in for observation overnight." "No!" Remus protested. I'm feeling much better. He would say that. It wasn't usually true, but he knew he would start to feel better eventually, and it didn't much matter whether he was in the hospital wing or not. I'm not being deliberately unkind, Remus, the nurse sighed. This is for your health. I'll go straight to bed. We'll look after him, James said, earnestly, standing up. Remus waited to see if that worked. James was good with grown-ups, especially witches. He'd even been known to soften McGonagall once or twice, though that might have been more to do with his Quidditch skills. Madame Pomfrey was unmoved. I'm sorry, Mr. Potter, but no. Fine, Peter said, uncharacteristically firm. We'll stay here then. Yeah, Sirius and James said, as one. You'll miss dinner, Remus said. I'm sure we can arrange something just this once, Madame Pomfrey said, trying not to smile. All right, boys, but you're to keep quiet. And get on with your homework. I'll not have you using Mr. Lupin here as an excuse for not handing anything in. With a wave of her wand, 3 more chairs appeared out of thin air, along with a long pinewood desk complete with inkwells for their quills. Remus opened his mouth to speak, but Madame Pomfrey was apparently psychic. And no, Remus, no homework for you. Just rest. Remus shut his mouth and lay back down. How was he supposed to keep ahead of Sirius and James if the woman wouldn't let him study? Can I read my book? He asked, meekly. As long as it doesn't strain your eyes. She left, and the other 3 boys dutifully pulled out their homework and began scribbling. Remus craned his neck to try and see what they were working on. He was all up to date with his, but had been doing some extra reading in charms in an attempt to defeat Lily in their upcoming exams. James covered his work with his sleeves. No looking, Remu, just you rest. Ugh, call me loony. Remus groaned. Anything but Remu. But it suits you, Sirius said over his quill. Remu. Stop it or I'll bite you. Remu. Remu. Peter joined in, all 3 boys giggling hysterically, but trying not to be heard. I hate my name. Remus covered his face with the book he was reading. It wasn't fair. James Potter was so reassuringly ordinary. Peter Pettigrew was perfectly respectable, and Sirius Bloody Black was the coolest name ever, whichever way you looked at it. You might as well call me anything you like. I don't know what could be worse. Loony Remu? James suggested unhelpfully. Remoony? Sirius could hardly breathe from laughing now. Remoony, he snorted, collapsing onto his desk, shoulders shaking. Moony is actually quite good, Peter suddenly said, very soberly. Huh? Moony, as a nickname. Remus stared at him, unaccustomed to paying very much attention to anything Peter said. He thought about it, rolling the name around in his head. It sounded like loony, but it was nowhere near as horrible. I don't hate it, he said finally. I love it, James said. Moony suits you. Won't people, catch on? He worried, chewing his lip. Nah, Sirius waved a hand. We'll tell them it's after the muggle in the Who. They're all muggles in the Who, Remus replied. But I don't play the drums. You like hitting things? Sirius shrugged. Thanks. No problem, Remoony. Some hours later, after Madame Pomfrey had brought them all dinner, James had left for Quidditch practice, and Peter for a detention. Sirius had given up on his homework long ago, and was instead attempting to perfect a tentacles-armed jinx on himself. Remus was ignoring this behaviour. He knew that Sirius was pronouncing the incantation all wrong, with the emphasis in the wrong place, but he wasn't going to tell him, because he wasn't exactly sure why Sirius wanted a tentacle arm so badly, and it couldn't be for any good reason. Eventually, bored, Sirius leaned back in his chair, feet propped up on Remus's bed. What are you reading, anyway? The Epic of Gilgamesh, Remus replied, turning a page. He was nearly at the end, and his reading spell was waning. If Sirius would just leave him alone for 5 more minutes. What's it about? It's yours, he said, surprised. I got it off your shelf. Ah, one of the Muggle ones? I haven't read many of them, to be honest. They were my Uncle Alfred's. Right. So? So what, Black? What's it about? A man called Gilgamesh. Okay, you have to agree that that's a worse name than Remus Lupin. Remus chuckled. Yeah, all right. It could always be worse. So, tell me about this goulash bloke. Gilgamesh. He was a king, a long time ago. See? Now I'm hooked. That's how all good stories start. Sirius cupped his head in his hands, staring at Remus, as if he was a professor teaching Sirius's favourite subject. No, you're just putting off your astrology essay. I'll copy off James's. Sirius waved a casual hand. Tell me more, O keeper of knowledge. I've read to you plenty of times. Remus sighed, putting down the book. There was no getting out of it when Sirius was in this sort of mood. Gilgamesh was a king. Yeah, a long time ago. You've established that. Look, shut up or piss off. Okay. Sirius held his hands up in surrender. Carry on. So, he was a king, but not a good one. He wasn't fully human. He was 2/3 god, so he was stronger than everyone else, and his people were frightened of him. He was dangerous, so his people prayed. That's when you ask the gods for help. And the gods sent another man to control Gilgamesh. Was he even stronger? No, but he was part animal. So this beast man killed Gilgamesh. No, they fought each other for a really long time, but Gilgamesh still won. He didn't kill Enkidu, though he sort of recognized that they were equals. As they became friends, best friends. They have all these adventures together, fighting off other monsters and stuff. It's cool. I want to know more about the beast man. Enkidu, he was a master of animals, and he was happy living in the wild. But then, after he's sent to control Gilgamesh, he can't ever go back to nature. So he never really belongs. But he had his friend, right? Yeah, but... Well, I don't want to spoil the ending for you. It's okay. I hardly ever read Muggle stuff. You're missing so much, Remus explained. Well, okay. Enkidu dies. What? Yeah, it's sort of sad. He was my favourite character too. But why? To teach Gilgamesh about death, I think. Before Enkidu, he was too arrogant to believe anything could hurt him. But after he loses him, he realizes that he's not the master of everything. No one can control death. That's a really depressing thought, Mooney. Remus shrugged. It had all seemed pretty straightforward to him. Chapter 36, Second Year, Love and Marriage. Friday the 20th of April, 1972. Remus loved Hunky-Dory more than anything. It was by turns bright and happy, then dark and introspective. He felt that David Bowie must have had some superhuman insight in his soul. Even if he didn't always fully understand the lyrics, he felt as though they somehow made sense. He hummed the tune to Changes quietly under his breath as he walked up and down the Lark Library shelves, his wand lit for a better look. He really ought to be catching up on potions, but Lily had offered to help him over the weekend, and he'd already been revising Transfiguration all day. It had taken that long to turn an old top hat into a rabbit and back again. Remus finally found the shelf he was looking for. The British Wizard's Guide to Nuptial Laws, 1700 to 1950. He hoped that would be recent enough. It was huge, and he had to get up on a stepladder to reach it. Stretching, Remus just about had to purchase on the dusty old leather cover, and was about to pull it down towards him when another hand reached up and grabbed his wrist. Yelping, Remus yanked his hand back and almost toppled off the stool, coming face to face with Narcissa Black. Ugh, it's you, she said distastefully. She was a head taller than him, so they came about level as long as he kept his balance. She did not release his hand. "Give me that." "No, I had it first," he replied, still trying to pull away. She had an iron grip. "Go away, little boy. What could you possibly want this for?" She gave him a hard shove, and he toppled backwards, landing painfully on his backside. Narcissa smiled down at him, victorious, holding the heavy tome. He scowled. "What do you want it for?" "That's none of your business," she breezed, tossing her pale hair out of her eyes in a manner eerily similar to Sirius. She turned and began to walk away, between the gloomy stacks. Remus scrambled to his feet. "Wait," he said, trying to keep his voice down so that Madame Pince didn't throw him out again. "Oi, Narcissa, wait!" He tugged her robes. She spun around with furious eyes, her wand raised. Remus instinctively grabbed his own wand just in time. They both stood like statues for a moment. He knew that she had cursed James and Sirius on several occasions, and that the whole Black family knew all sorts of dark magic. But at the same time, Remus had never cursed a girl before, and it felt wrong. "I just wanted to know," he said carefully, choosing his words, "if it was anything to do with you and Sirius. The engagement thing." She lowered her wand slowly, regarding him with suspicious interest. "So he's told you about that, has he?" She raised an eyebrow, which was still as inky black as her natural hair colour. "Yes, little boy, that's exactly why I need it. You don't think I want to be married to that whiny little blood traitor, do you?" Remus just shrugged. The truth was, it hadn't occurred to him how Narcissa felt about it all. He'd been so focused on helping Sirius that he hadn't considered whether anyone else might be working on exactly the same problem. Narcissa sighed impatiently. "Well, I don't, and I'm not expecting my brat of a cousin to come up with a solution any time soon, so here I am." She didn't sound angry any more, just bitter. Now that he was closer to her, Remus could see that she had dark rings under her eyes. "I want to find a solution," he said, tilting his chin up to meet her gaze, wishing he wasn't shorter than her. "I've been trying, anyway." "Ha!" Narcissa laughed humorlessly. "A second year? And what have you come up with, She tapped her black patent heel on the dark floorboards. "Well," Remus swallowed, "not much. Nothing good enough. Unless you were already married." "I've thought of that," Narcissa snapped. "I'm not of age yet. I can't. I'd have eloped with Lucius the moment they proposed this ridiculous engagement, but I'm not 17 until October." "Right," Remus nodded, surprised to hear this. "And it can't wait because of the betrothal ceremony this summer, right?" "Correct." She was looking at him with slightly less venom now, as if she found the conversation amusing rather than irritating. "But I was thinking, what actually is the ceremony?" he asked, feeling braver. "What do you and Sirius have to do?" "Oh, the usual Black family rubbish," she replied. "A banquet, astrological charts, probably a commemorative portrait of the two of us. Mother still has Bella's hanging in the dining room." The thought of a portrait depicting 13-year-old Sirius with his 16-year-old cousin was repulsive to Remus. Narcissa didn't sound like she relished the idea either. "This is all his fault, you know," she said, acting if he's some special case. If he had simply followed tradition like the rest of us, towed the line until he was old enough to get out. She trailed off, her eyes bright with angry tears, which she wiped away quickly. "Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm marrying Lucius, and that's all there is to it. Thank goodness he stood by me through all of this. Anyone else would have walked away." Remus didn't like to comment. What did he know about relationships? He'd never even seen one up close. They were silent for a few minutes, while Narcissa composed herself. Once she had, she gave a sniff and looked at Remus again. "I shan't curse you," she said magnanimously. "But I'm warning you, I've had just about enough of people meddling with my future. so just keep your nose out from now on." With that, she turned and left, leaving Remus with plenty to think about. Monday, the 30th of April, 1973. "Mooney, what are all these books for?" James asked as he tripped over a pile Remus had carefully stacked near the dorm entrance. They were useless, and he'd been planning to take them back that afternoon. "Just some research," he replied, not looking up from his current book. "Where have you been?" "Plotting." Sirius followed James, stepping over the scattered books which his friend was trying to clear up. Remus raised an eyebrow. "Plotting? Map or mischief?" "Bit of both," Sirius grinned, throwing himself onto Remus's bed. He picked up a book. "Wizard wedding rituals?" he laughed. "Who are you marrying, Mooney? Not Evans. James will have to challenge you to a duel." "I do not fancy Evans," James spat from where he was squatted on the floor. "Magical marriages," he read, picking up the final book and placing it on top of the pile. "Seriously, Remus, what's all this about?" Remus sighed, putting down the book and rubbing his eyes. "I'm trying to help you," he kicked Sirius gently with his foot. "Someone's got to get you out of this stupid engagement." "Oi!" Sirius scowled. "I'm doing everything I can." "What are you doing?" "Haven't I had more detentions than anyone else this year? I must get a howler a week. And my lions, don't forget about my lions at the Quidditch match." Remus stared at him, dumbfounded. "How is any of that supposed to help?" "I'm proving that I'm not the marrying type." "No offence, mate," James put in, coming to sit with them on the bed. "But I don't think your lot really care that you're not the marrying type." "Exactly," Remus nodded. "You're the heir. You have to marry another pureblood, and the Black family have a long history of intermarriage. Even your parents are cousins." How do you know?" Sirius looked uncomfortable. "I've been reading." Remus gestured to all of the books. "There's lots of stuff in the library on your family. One of the oldest wizarding houses in Britain, traced all the way back to the Middle Ages, where the family seat was in Inverness in Scotland. I know all of this." Sirius waved a hand. "Yeah, but did you know that you aren't the first Black who wanted to get out of a marriage?" "Well, obviously a dromedare, though that was more of a thing she did want to marry. Only Ted was the wrong sort." "Not just her. Lyra Black defied the family's wishes in 1901 to marry into the Crab family, and Delphinius Black was supposed to marry his niece in 1750, but left her at the altar and married Fidelia Bulstrode. And your Uncle Alfred never married either, although there's no explanation." "Yeah, we're not supposed to talk about him," Sirius replied edgily. "I've heard Mother ranting about him, and I'm pretty sure he was a queer." There was an awkward silence. "My dad knew Alfred," James said. "Said he was an all-right bloke." "He was always nice to me," Sirius shrugged. "Left me his money and everything. Made sure no one else could touch it until I'm of age. Makes my parents furious, you know, that he didn't return all the cash to the family vault, so I can give him credit for that, even if he was, well, whatever." Remus's throat was very dry, and he cleared it, wanting to move on. "So anyway, it just goes to show that you can get out of this sort of thing. Only problem is, I can't find any good details on how they all got away." "Don't bother," Sirius said gloomily. "Even if you did find out, none of them had my mother to contend with. You know what she's like. She's probably going to make us take the unbreakable vow." "She wouldn't," James said, aghast. "She'd do anything," Sirius nodded. Remus chewed his lip thoughtfully. He didn't know what the unbreakable vow was. It sounded like dark magic. From what he'd already read about the House of Black, he knew that the library's restricted section would probably have this. He'd have to borrow James's cloak for that, and go at night. No matter. He refused to be deterred from this. He owed it to Sirius. Hadn't Remus once told Sirius that his own problem was hopeless, inescapable, and hadn't Sirius worked tirelessly, learned to perform complicated Newt standard magic just to help him? This was no different. He just had to work harder. Knowing that Narcissa was also working on the problem was strangely comforting. Remus knew from her curses that she must be a very accomplished and clever witch, and there was no doubt in his mind that she usually got her way. "I'm marrying Lucius, and that's all there is to it." There had to be something in that. He remembered Flitwick telling them that love, natural, everyday human love, was one of the most powerful types of magic. While Remus didn't personally feel that anything about Lucius and Narcissa's coupling was natural exactly, he knew that it had to be a lot more powerful than family honour. It had to be.